And I don't know, again, I'm not saying that the movies necessarily predict the future. I don't think that Brian De Palma knew that in 2025 we would have these types of assassins, but it makes sense because, again, the art world is tapping into, in my view, the spiritual world. And artists are inspired. When we talk about artists being inspired, a lot of times that inspiration comes from the spiritual realm. That's been my theory, my thesis forever. And so they might not be cognizant of, quote, predicting the future, but there is a kind of a prophetic spirit going on. And we can see that very clearly, for example, in Dostoevsky. We've detailed in many podcasts, especially with Mark Hackard and Tristan, cases where Dostoevsky was very prescient in his fiction and predicting mass chaos through socialism, right? We think about The Possessed or Demons, where you have the characters predicting 60 million skulls to bring in world socialism. You have the Grand Inquisitor chapter in Brothers Karamazov, where Dostoevsky's characters are predicting the socialism, world salvation turn that the Vatican will take to becoming essentially against Christ, antichrist, but offering people a world socialist, anti-war, pacifist, de-armament future. And that's exactly what we read a couple nights ago in the Gaudium et Spes Vatican II documents, where they actually, and I didn't even realize paragraph 66 actually encourages chain migration. So it's even worse than I even knew, because I was looking at some of the highlight sections, but there's other sections that I didn't even get to or wasn't even aware of. So Vatican II's Gaudium et Spes is a powerful fulfillment, Pacamenteros of John the 23rd as well, of what Dostoevsky's Grand Inquisitor chapters predicted, 80, 70, 80, 90 years earlier, or The Possessed, right? That world socialism would lead to these sorts of scenarios. And far from something like Fatima, vindicating the Vatican or something like that, rather, Dostoevsky's more powerful and more predictive than these goofy Fatima predictions, because the Vatican itself is the one that adopted world socialist, Fabian socialist principles in the Gaudium et Spes documents on record. Now, we're going to look and see further evidence of why that's the case and how the Vatican has turned to being a tool of this, as I elucidated in my closing statement of the debate, when we look at Paulo Freire and Freire and the other liberation theology socialists like Camorra, Archbishop Camorra, who were mentors and influences on both Klaus and Pope Francis. That will help us understand how this is coming to fruition even post-Vatican II, even still. But we'll get to that here in a moment. We're also going to look at some of the unknown and forgotten MK Ultra documents that people aren't even aware of, like studies on sorcery and witchcraft. Oh, you didn't know that? Well, yeah, we've talked about that for many, many years. And I'm going to show you the actual documents, the actual sub-project. And shout out to Jamie for reminding me of that today. But before we get to that, I want to talk about some more of the films in this bizarre genre